In this video, I'm going to show you 5 easy ways to blend with water-based brush pens. These are ways that you can get beautiful watercolor-like blending effects using markers that you probably already have around your house. Water-based markers just means that the ink inside them is water-based and able to be blended with water. So like Crayola markers, the markers I'm using are Tombow dual brush markers. For this first technique, you'll need to grab 2 colors, a lighter color and then a darker color that work well together. And then we're going to use the darker color to color the tip of the lighter color pen. You can either do this by literally just taking the darker pen and coloring some of that ink onto the lighter colored pen tip. You can also just press the 2 pen tips together firmly for a bit. And the best way for this to work is to hold them kind of vertically with the darker color on top. And then you can put the darker pen away and use the light colored pen to start doing your writing or whatever you're doing. Turn the brush pen a little bit so that the side that you colored is on the paper. And you can see as I write a subtle color transition between the darker purple and then the lighter purple. And that just happens naturally on the pen tip as you go. To clean any of that extra darker color off of the pen tip, you can just color it on a scrap piece of paper until none of that darker purple is showing up and it's all just the original light color. None of these techniques damage the pens in any way because they're water-based. Everything just blends really smoothly and cleans off really easy. For the second technique, you'll need some sort of a blending palette. Now, I have a blending palette here that came with my Tombow dual brush markers, but you can also just use any piece of plastic, even just a plastic bag or a dish, some non-porous surface that you can use to mix colors on. So I'm going to again take 2 colors, and I'm going to take one of the colors and just scribble some of that marker onto this blending palette. And then take your second color, in my case the blue, and we are going to pick up some of this pink color with the tip of this pen, and once again just let the 2 mix on the pen tip. And you can see some of that darker pink on the blue pen tip here. And now I will just start writing with this pen. It starts out as a purple because that's a mix of the blue and the pink, and then as I continue to write, it transitions back to the original blue pen color. If you wanted the blend to go further through the word or to last longer, just keep picking up more color with your pen as you write. And once again, you can just clean off your pen tip by scribbling it on some scrap paper. This third blending technique requires some sort of a paintbrush. So I'm going to use a water brush, which has water in the barrel of the brush, but you can also just use a regular paintbrush and dip that in water as you go. And then I'm going to grab, once again, 2 marker colors that will blend well together. So start out by taking the lighter of the 2 colors you've chosen, so in my case the yellow, and start by getting that on the paper. And then I will take the second color and I'm just going to color the top half of these letters with some of the darker color. You just want to get some of that secondary color layered on top of the lighter color. And then I'm going to take my water brush. I've got a little paper towel here. With a water brush, all you have to do is squeeze the barrel a little bit to get some water to come out the bristles. And then I'm going to use this to blend the colors on the paper so that there's a nice smooth transition between these 2 colors. All I'm doing is kind of running the wet brush back and forth over that transition area until it smooths out. You can go over the entire letter to make everything really nice and smooth. And I am not using the best paper here. If I was using something like watercolor paper, the blending would be a whole lot smoother because that paper is thicker, but you can still get some pretty decent blending even on just regular cardstock like this is. Another really fun thing you can do with water and a paintbrush is you can take the marker ink and just activate it with a little bit of water and a paintbrush. And then you can use that marker ink and paint with it just like watercolor. And if you aren't familiar with using a water brush, all you have to do to clean it is squeeze a little bit of water out, rub it on a paper towel a bit until it's clean. You can also clean off any palette you used for blending just with some water and a paper towel. This fourth blending technique is a little bit more involved, but the effect is really beautiful. So again, you'll need two colors, a lighter color and then a darker color. So we're going to start off by using the lighter color. I'm just going to do a single letter for this. So start out by writing the letter in this light color and then switch to the darker color you have, and we're going to layer some of the darker color on top. I'm going to layer this darker color about halfway down this letter. And I'll do the other part of the letter later. You do want to work a little bit quickly for this. So switch back to the lighter color, and we're going to use that to blend this smoothly downward. So for this, it's important to have a little bit of scrap paper nearby because it's handy for just scribbling your pen clean and then continue blending so that you have a really nice, smooth, clean blend. I'm going to do the other half of this letter now, so back to my darker color. I'm going to color just a little bit of a darker section on one half of this part of the letter, and then back to my lighter color and blend that downwards. And it's important to work fairly quickly with this technique because you don't want the marker to dry completely. Otherwise, you won't be able to activate it enough for a really smooth blend, which is what we want. I'll add just a touch of the darker color at the end here and then blend that in. And if you wanted to, you could even add a third color at the top if you wanted to make it a little bit deeper, so that there would be really nice contrast between dark at the top and then light at the bottom. So with this technique, you can really play around with different colors. This is one of my favorite blending techniques. It gives you some of the most beautiful and vibrant blends. The last marker blending technique I want to show you involves using a colorless blender pen. These blender pens often come with marker sets. So like this one came with the Tombow dual brush pen sets that I get. They look white, but they are clear, and they pretty much just add some moisture to the paper that you can use for blending. There are a few ways that you can use a colorless blender pen to do some blending. One thing you can do is just take any marker color and color some of that color onto the clear pen tip, and then you can use the blender pen to color and it will give you a nice gradient. And as with any of these pens, to clean off the blender pen, just scribble it clean on some scrap paper. Another thing you can do, of course, is scribble a little bit of color on a blending palette instead and then pick that up with your blender pen. Or you can also use a blender pen just to blend two colors together, similar to how we used a wet paintbrush. So these colors are actually pretty stuck into the paper right now, and the blender pen isn't able to blend them out very smoothly. So this is actually a perfect example of how much paper matters when you're trying to do blending techniques like this. If I was using a thicker, higher quality paper, things would blend more smoothly. So the blender pen is kind of activating the ink, it's kind of blending them together, but still not great. In general, it is a lot harder to get nice, smooth blends on just, your generic cardstock paper. Paper actually makes a big difference in how effective some of these blending techniques are. Let's try this again on some watercolor paper. We'll try to blend these together a little better. And you can see how the pen is just adding some moisture to the paper so that things can blend together and smooth out that transition between the two colors. So there we have a much better looking blend than my attempts on the cardstock paper. So this really makes the point of how much paper matters when you're doing any kind of blending or watercolor type of painting like this. It doesn't even just have to be watercolor paper. It can also be just some thicker Bristol paper. I will link my favorite papers to use in the description below this video. Using a thicker paper that's better made to take lots of wet layers and blending makes a huge difference. You can see how smoothly these colors are blending together when I use just a little little bit of water. So with any of these blending techniques I've showed you, you can most often have even better results when you use thicker, higher quality paper. I will link all of my favorite marker and blending supplies in the description right below this video, so just check there. So I hope that you try some or all of these marker blending techniques and that you have a lot of color-filled fun with these ideas.